Now, two more pieces of information that are vital to knowing what's going on in the United States and what just happened this past week, and I'm sure what they will be talking about all day Monday and throughout the week. President Obama vetoed the military defense budget, otherwise known as the National Defense Authorization Act, or the NDAA, over the Guantanamo Bay prison. He says that the deal won't let him close it, and that's one of his biggest legacies. And so that's what the media, the mainstream, old stream corporate media, is trying to frame the discussion around Guantanamo Bay. But my article here says that actually this should be more about Ukraine and Syria. President Obama used his veto power on Thursday to reject the NDAA of 2016. Obama says the bill would limit the transfer of detainees from the military prison at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, to the United States. As a result of the veto, the White House has said they will use emergency overseas contingency operations account to cover the shortfall until an agreement is reached. White House spokesman Eric Schultz said the president believes that the men and women who serve in our armed forces deserve adequate and responsible funding, not through a gimmick or not through a slush fund, but one that would and could withstand scrutiny. So basically, this is just, it's so stupid because this puts Obama in the position where it's like, oh, he looks good, right? You know, the people who are all concerned about Guantanamo, like myself, are like, oh, Obama's doing something good. You know, maybe he's going to keep this promise. You know, he vetoed this bill because they wouldn't let him they wouldn't let him transfer detainees out of Guantanamo so it could be shut down. But no, that's not what it's about. Actually, Obama and the Republicans, and this is just, there's multiple layers here that we're going to go through. The first layer, of course, is what the old stream is talking about. This is where they want you to focus on this aspect, but they're not really putting it in the terms that you should. Essentially, we have a president who is a freaking neocon war hawk, and we have all the Republicans who are just as bloodthirsty, but Obama is calling for spending limits to be raised on defense, which is military, and for non-defense. And the Republicans only want to raise spending limits for the military, for defense, but not for other non-defense areas. So basically, they're just arguing about how much money to raise and which areas. So it's funny. They're both wanting more money, but they just disagree on which areas. Obama is trying to get $38 billion more for the military, to cover all the costs and to run an empire, basically. And he states that he opposes the current version because it limits on how he can transfer Guantanamo prisoners. And of course, I'm adamantly against, for closing Guantanamo and for releasing those people, because if you follow my work, I've written about it before. There's tons of people in there who have been found, not guilty of any crime, yet they are not allowed to go home because nobody will accept them because of the stigma of being called a terrorist by the United States. And they're still being tortured and force-fed and just horrible things. There's apparently 657 people who have been transferred, 9 have died, and there's still more there. Now, another point I make in this, you may remember that in 2012, Obama had no problem signing the NDAA, and that is the NDAA which enshrined and legalized the indefinite detention of American citizens who are suspected of ties to terrorism. NDAA 2012. This is what made it. I mean, if you've never, I don't know how long you've been awake or paying attention, but go look it up if you haven't. You can find the articles. They're still there. It's still being fought in court, but the Obama administration has fought it off every time and has, they've taken it from one court to the next so that they could keep the power. Basically, Obama signed it and said, oh, I promise I'm not going to use it. But it definitely gives any president coming in, and there's some crazy freaking people out there, the ability to indefinitely detain American citizens without trial, without, all the things that you've come to suspect and believe that were, what a free country was about. Those are all now gone, and all they have to do is say that you are somehow tied to terrorism. And Obama didn't mind. He didn't veto that. He was cool with that, but now he's saying he's vetoing it because it's about Guantanamo, but really it's about the money. It's all about asking for more money. But here's the last, and I think one of the most important points that none of them are telling you about. Within the Senate version of the bill, there is Section 1251, which authorizes the Department of Defense to, quote, provide security assistance and intelligence support to military and other security forces of the government of Ukraine. Section 1253 requires the DoD, Department of Defense, to report to Congress on options for expanding the presence of U.S. ground forces of the size of a brigade combat team in Eastern Europe to respond, blah, 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 blah. Able to respond to unconventional or hybrid warfare tactics such as those used by the Russian Federation in Crimea and Eastern Ukraine. So, the current edition of the NDAA will continue to involve the United States in the conflict in eastern Ukraine by offering lethal aid to the Ukrainians fighting off Russia's advances in Crimea. Section 1532 of the House version gives the DoD permission to, quote, provide assistance and sustainment to the military and national security forces of Ukraine through 2016, including providing lethal weapons of a defensive nature to the security forces of Ukraine. So while the media is focusing on the battle between the White House and the Republicans about Guantanamo, and they're both really asking for more money, we have to remember that all of the current versions that are of the NDAA, which they're debating now, and which now they're going to debate it a little bit more, and then Obama's eventually going to sign it, no matter what, that he will sign it. All of the versions that exist will continue the proxy war that's taking place between the United States and Russia, and possibly accelerate us towards a direct conflict over Ukraine, and this is also taking place as the situation in Syria develops. So just remember that. Yes, President Obama vetoed the 2016 NDAA, but not for the reasons you believe, and they're also not telling you what's really in that bill.